Welcome back to Histories Tech, and today we are looking at the Convair F-106 Delta Dart. This Delta Wing aircraft was actually developed as an improvement to develop the ultimate interceptor based on the F-102's platform. While it didn't have as an illustrious career as some other aircraft, it did have some amazing highlights, including being able to land itself with no pilot. But let's go ahead and look at its history and development. Now, as I previously stated, the F-106 is actually an improved variant of the F-102 Delta Dagger. Now, initially, the F-106 was supposed to be a variant of the F-102 Delta Dagger known as the F-102B. But the F-102B had multiple problems getting its new engine and went through various design phases and improvements before finally a new engine was settled on known as the Pratt & Whitney J75. With these new engines, they had to make some modifications. They had to lengthen the fuselage, clean up the wing design and simplify it, redo the air inlet ducts for the aircraft. And while this was happening, production was going on with the F-102A. And there wasn't enough money for the F-102B to be developed at the same time. So in 1956, the United States Air Force redesignated the F-102B as the F-106 and allowed for parallel development between the F-102A and the F-106. The first F-106 prototype took off in December of 1956, and it was honestly just an aerodynamic testbed to see if the design of the wings and overall characteristics of the aircraft would function as needed. The second prototype was the more important one. It actually was fitted with all the equipment necessary to make it a true F-106. And somewhat like the F-102, the results of the testing of the aircraft were actually underwhelming. It was found to be barely an improvement over the F-102A. The aircraft's acceleration and maximum speed were under the estimates of Convair. Furthermore, the engines and avionics were actually pretty problematic for the aircraft, and the program was on the verge of being canceled. Now, the program actually was saved because of the Air Defense Command heavily advocating for its existence, as they needed a high-speed all-weather interceptor. A series of test developments were pushed through known as Category 2 and Category 3 testing in order to increase both the maximum speed and acceleration of the aircraft. By 1957, the Air Force went ahead and offered a conditional acceptance of the F-106 and eventually ordered 120 aircraft with a final order of 350. Finally, in 1959, the F-106 was deployed. However, it immediately was shown to be extremely problematic with numerous technical issues, including an issue that grounded the entire fleet because a canopy during mid-flight jettisoned itself off. However, once many of these early issues with the aircraft were finally fixed, it actually gained an incredibly high reputation among pilots. The aircraft's entire record was mostly deployed to more northern regions such as Alaska, Iceland, northern United States, places like Germany, and even South Korea, to be utilized as a bomber interceptor. And this actually makes up a majority of the career of the F-106. It was utilized anytime there was a fear of Russian-made bombers getting too close to the United States or its allies. While the aircraft was available during the Vietnam War, it was never sent there, actually had never saw combat, and was never even exported to foreign users, with only one country even being considered to sell to, which was Canada, after they canceled their Avro Aero program. The aircraft was even involved in an attempt to standardize aircraft for the United States military known as Operation High Speed. And this actually pitted the Navy's F-4 Phantom variant against the F-106. Now, the Phantom actually did outperform the 106, mainly due to having better engines, higher speed, while the F-106 did have better maneuverability. But due to its payload capabilities, the F-4 Phantom actually ended up replacing the F-105 Thunder Chief instead. This allowed the F-106 to continue its career service into the 70s and 80s, and in 1972 it received its final major upgrade, including an upgraded cockpit for better visibility, improved gun sights for its M61 Vulcan cannon. Interestingly enough, many units actually removed the M61 in favor of keeping the aircraft nuclear capable. In 1981, many of the 106s began being passed on to Air National Guard units in favor of a new aircraft, the McDonnell Douglas F-15. The F-106 would remain in service until 1988 with both the United States Air Force and the Air National Guard. Before I get into the variants of the aircraft, I do want to talk about a rather unique story about the aircraft, and that is the story of the Cornfield Bomber. And that is an event in the history of the F-106, in which an aircraft actually entered into a flat spin, and during the process of ejecting it, this actually restabilized and rebalanced the aircraft, and it actually later belly landed in a snow-covered field with minor damage, so little that it was actually repaired and actually returned to service. This actually shows how well a Delta Wing aircraft can fly. In terms of variants, there actually have been quite a few, including this one here, the F-106B, which is a two-seat variant. But there are actually more variants of the aircraft that were not built than actually were built. Now, similar to other aircraft, most of these unbuilt variants included upgrades such as improved engines, avionics, radars, things like that. However, the most unique variant of the aircraft is arguably the F-106X. Now, this aircraft was actually built as an alternative to the Lockheed YF-12, which was a high-speed, high-altitude interceptor variant of the A-12. Improvements to the 106X included a pair of forward canards for increased control, and a new JT4B22 turbojet engine, which would have had potentially more than 26,000 pounds of thrust. A highly advanced fire control system to increase survivability. The final major variant produced was actually the QF-106As, which is a drone variant of the aircraft, and this is actually what a majority of the F-106 ended their lives as. Now, those that weren't converted into drones actually saw life in multiple ways. Some were destroyed. A portion of them were actually sank off the coast of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico to become an artificial reef, and then there's actually quite a few on display around the United States. But there you have it, a look at the F-106 Delta Dart, an aircraft that was built to be the ultimate interceptor, and instead just was a long-serving, hard-working aircraft that never saw combat, but was the main workhorse of the United States Air Force for several decades, and was only replaced because, one, the United States was done building specific interceptor aircraft, and two, a much better platform, the F-15, came about and replaced it. But that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you on the next time.